We all want to be heroes of our own stories. Well, how do we make that happen? Welcome to Gaining Advantage. Hi, I'm Dale Critchley, owner and chief tea drinker of Wormworks Publishing. We are all about using tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons to make lives better. The big project that we're working on is called Disabilities in Depth, creating disabled and neuroatypical characters in Dungeons & Dragons. And I made an offer in our last episode, but if you didn't see it, the offer still stands for just a couple more weeks. And that is if you are disabled or neuroatypical or mentally ill, and you are a player of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, or you're an artist, then we are interested in having you as part of this book. We've had a number of people step up, and we really appreciate that to make this book happen. And so what we're offering is if you would like to share with me your disability symptoms, then what I'll do is I will share with you the entry that I have in the book, because we're taking like every symptom in existence pretty much, plus a bunch of fantasy ones, and creating game mechanics for all of it in order to normalize disability and neurodivergence and mental illness in people's lives. And so if you are interested in helping out with that by looking at the write-up that I have in the book for your symptoms, you can tell me, is that how you experience it? Is that how it feels for you? And do the game mechanics that we've developed make sense? And in exchange for your feedback and sharing that personal experience with me, I will offer you a free copy of the book. If you're an artist and are interested in submitting artwork and joining our artist community, then for you, you will not only get a free copy of the book, but you'll also get access to the manuscript to be able to start using it right now in your games or however you'd like in order to look at it. And that is normally only available to our Young Dragon Patreons, but we are offering it to you as a thank you for submitting artwork for this project, because all of the artwork in this project will be created by disabled, neurodivergent, or mentally ill artists. Also, I'd like to announce that possibly by the time you see this, if not the following Monday, that we will have launched our Accessible Adventure of the Week and Disabled NPC of the Week. They're already available to our patrons, and they will be launching on Monday for the public. You can find those at DM's Guild, or the easiest way to find them is to sign up for our newsletter at wormworkspublishing.com, and then you'll get the notification as soon as they're available. And so now with all that done, let's get to our first interview. What if Superman never went to a planet with a yellow sun? What if Tony Stark didn't have the money to build his armor? What if Frodo didn't have help with the One Ring? Contrary to the myth, heroes don't become heroes on their own. It takes resources of one kind or another. Today, we welcome Moni Barrette, co-founder of Creators Assemble, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting indie creators and promoting education through popular culture and gaming. Welcome, Moni.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about Creators Assemble. What was the driving force that started it, and how does it work?
So we are, as you mentioned, a nonprofit organization, and we are only about a year old. We started, and I'll just be honest, so I'm a librarian, and it's a group of educators. And it actually started in the comic space specifically because as a librarian, I saw how much comic books were bringing a joy of reading that as a career librarian, I hadn't been seeing a surge of in that way. And we actually got into the gaming in a similar manner, in that basically, I do play role playing games, I do read comics, but moreover, as an educator, I feel it's my job and it's our job as a community of educators to see what new ways there are out there for people to learn and find a love of learning and bring people together and have social emotional growth and community building. So that's kind of the idea behind Creators Assemble. We actually started with in-person networking events at Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, and then at New York as well. And what it was basically having publishers, indie creators, quote unquote comics famous creators, and librarians and teachers come together and actually talk from each person's perspective what we could do to work together more, to get people reading more, to get people discovering these comics. And then it kind of expanded. The TTRPG community has been so welcoming to us that as libraries have started to kind of see the benefit of hosting games in the library, we've been working to kind of promote that idea that you can bring a community together and have wonderful library programs that bring people to your libraries and engage people in classrooms through the gaming community.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's great. Both comic books and role-playing games were my upbringing, and I know that my vocabulary, my reading, my writing. I'll give you a great example. After my freshman year of high school, we moved. I switched high schools, and I had already taken American history, and so I was expecting to take world history, but because at that school they did American history as a sophomore, and I couldn't fit world history into my schedule because I was supposed to already have that, I ended up taking American history twice and never took world history. And yet, because of comic books and especially the research that I did for my Dungeons and Dragons game, I knew so much more world history than my classmates did
That's
that never took
awesome.
the class.
And
And
that's what
yeah.
we're striving to kind of help close that gap. Is there's such a big disparity still. Like there's teachers and librarians who get it and we see that they enjoy it, and we hear stories like yours. But to like companies, it's still kind of anecdotal, right? Like it's, D&D Beyond and Marvel Studios, they see it, but as far as the publishing side, well, where's the money really coming from? And there's still, and this I could get on a soapbox for days, but there's still a lot of folks who don't see the benefit of like allowing, the games or the books to be distributed in libraries because, well, if people are borrowing it, they're not discovering it and reading it. And so that's part of what our work aims to do, is to kind of do some studies, some independent studies and surveys, and kind of show, no, through the TTRPG gaming programming that we had at the library, students were able to, increase their test scores or increase their subject knowledge in American history or world history, like you said, by this percent. So that's the kind of like unicorn that the education community is chasing, that we're hoping through our network and through having fun and playing and building this community that we can actually help bridge that gap.
Yeah. So you're saying that education can be fun.
Yes, and should be fun. Why are we making this drudgery? And I've said this, and librarians hate it when I say this, but I'm like, as far as literacy, we're losing the battle. Slowly but surely, fewer people are reading, fewer people are engaging that way. And through finding something they love, and even adding a gaming component, adding a reason for people to come together and discuss it and be social, these are ways that get people to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then you've kind of touched on this, but how can people in the TTRPG community benefit from your work?
And that's such a big like, oh, you guys need us, but truly with the company, right? You try to look at what is a need that can be fulfilled in a certain, arena, and in this case, you already know you love playing games. What a wonderful welcoming community, even more so than comics. I'm sorry, but TTRPG community has been incredible as far as like welcoming Creators Assemble as a new company with open arms. But as far as how they could benefit from us, well, a growing of network, finding like-minded people And then also, again, if you are, see, I've been a librarian who at my library, my origin story kind of was we didn't have adult graphic novels there. We had kids and teen graphic novels, and I had to, long story short, come up with a lot of justification. Why would you spend money on comics for adults? And, once I came up with that justification and they let me buy a few, they ended up getting a lot of checkouts, and a lot of like programming came from that, graphic novel book clubs and the like. And they started seeing the results. And that's where I started sort of teaching other educators of like, kind of, if you build it, they will come, right? In a cheesy way. So it's the same thing with TTRPGs, is like, you want to do this in your library because you see that your library users have fun doing it. But if we could help you with some of the justification that when you have to talk to the library director, why are we having 4-hour D&D games in the library? Or if you're a teacher and you're having to tell parents that, your classroom spent time doing this or that game, let us help you with actual facts and statistics and talking points, so that, we'll support you in saying we see the value in what you're doing, but also here's how you communicate that to the world at large.
That's funny. I just had a flashback of a time that I was considering a job in another city. And as I was trying to decide, one of the things I looked at was the online library catalog in that city to see what inventory they had of graphic novels. So that's fascinating.
Did that then compel you to want to use it because of the inventory they did or didn't have? Like, were you more prone to wanting to use the library if they had more graphic novels?
Yeah, because the one I was at had a really nice collection, and so I was in that library constantly, and I take my kids there and stuff, and it was, but that motivated me to go there.
Yeah.
And
That's music to my ears to hear you say that, because that was specifically my argument is adults are people too, as weird as that sounds. My experience in libraries is that you have a way older adult demographic who sort of read the latest, like James Patterson and all those guys. And that's fine. We need that as well. Or you have kids who have a lot of support from their school systems and their parents to want them to use the library. And then you have everyone yours and my age that come in and they're like, oh, I haven't been to the library since I was in 4th grade. Like, how do we stop that from happening? By offering things like gaming, like-minded people in their community to hang out with, like comics that, will bring them in and keep them engaged.
Right. So how has the creative space changed thanks to Creators Assemble?
We are just such a big change. No, I don't know that in 1 year we can say that we've changed the space, but I do hope that people are seeing. One thing that I didn't mention that we also do is support indie creator folks. That started again primarily illustrators and writers, but has expanded now to even like traditional print book writers, folks who are coming up with their own TTRPG games. And so I'm hoping that people are seeing the true support. Unfortunately, at this stage, I don't have the means to build, say, like the things that protect comics workers, for instance. The industry needs a lot more protection involved. But we are someone who has your back if you're negotiating a contracting position and you just want to know if they're being fair to you. Also, we're here to help promote the work that you're doing when it's in line with our objectives. And so I hope that people see that that is a true also transparency. There have been similar pop culture centric companies that aren't very transparent in like where funding, when donations come in, where it goes, what kind of projects they're doing. And for us, our board meetings are open. Anyone can come, any member of the public can come and voice their questions or concerns about anything we're doing or give us their ideas and feedback. And I just hope that transparency and that true network of supportive people and not really allowing anyone who treats anyone poorly into that space is a real safe, supportive environment for everyone in our, in this pop culture, gaming, comics, creative space.
Okay, so we have people who are writers and editors and all kinds of things that are going to be watching this.
Sure.
All right. What do you specifically, what would be the first thing that you might have to offer them or that they might want to connect with you about?
Those folks, you're always welcome to connect with us. We do have a Discord now. It'll be up on our website, and also info@creatorsassemble.org to ask any questions that you have. But I would also recommend for those folks to go over to our YouTube channel. And it is just literally Creators Assemble. It's YouTube/Creators Assemble. Because we have a lot of older interviews now up there from folks who work in editing, folks who work in writing, and a lot of like non-traditional. So especially in comics, it's like everyone kind of goes for the same couple of jobs. But we have some like Gina Gagliano from Penguin Random House talking about what other types of opportunities there are in the space, how to get them, what to look for. So check that out for sure.
Okay. So you just rescued a djinn from the hands of an ifrit, and it offers you 3 wishes to achieve Creators Assemble's goals. What do you wish for?
So I actually wrote this down. Continuing to expand the network, which I don't know if I'd need to use a wish for because the way things are going, and I mean that in a great way, is the network is continuing to expand. So thank you for your part in that, Dale, and having us for this interview. And funding. I'm just going to be completely transparent. We started at the height of like lockdown. It's not the most ideal time because we weren't eligible for any of like the government grants that went to nonprofits because we hadn't been established long enough. The height of the COVID pandemic was a great and terrible time. As far as great, because we had a literally captive audience, right? Everything we do is virtual, and so lots of folks were able to connect and feel a sense of community during that really tough time. But also funding has been a challenge. We're looking to fund like a mentorship program for at-risk youth right now by pairing them with creators to actually work on projects together. We work with Make-A-Wish. We do a lot of great things, but we're doing this as in addition to our day jobs. We're doing this, out of pocket and through the benefit of donations. So funding is a big one. And I don't really have a third one because I am in love with what we're doing right now. I know that the board and our network of folks that work with us feel the same. We're always looking for more volunteers to help with things, but at the end of the day, it's just more time. If I had to wish for anything, it's just more time to continue expanding and doing more of the same.
Cool. You said mentorship. It just, that's my favorite buzzword. So,
Oh, oh, buzzword. Yes, yeah, we're actually doing a mentorship coming up with Make-A-Wish for a critically ill young lady who wants to learn how to. She's got a little character that she's always wanted to kind of see as like in a story, and so we're working with one of our creators to be her mentor to kind of show her like how to put this character into a comic and make a story out of it, and even like what kind of technology you use to do that and what it's like to be a creator for a living. So that's the kind of thing we definitely want to do more of, but it takes funding obviously to compensate these mentors for their time.
okay. So, what one message would you like to give people who have creative ideas but don't know where to start?
So as far as not knowing where to start, in general, and this is what I've heard from other creators. So just full disclosure, I'm not a creator myself, but is believe in yourself. Do it, whatever it is you're passionate about, whether it's RPGs, creative, making things, do it a little bit every day. Even if you're not happy with that day's results, just keep pushing. And another big thing, and I don't think a lot of people in kind of these independent pop culture spaces realize, you really have to be comfortable marketing and advocating for yourself. So, and that's a hard skill when you're someone who just wants to stay home and get paid to draw, right? And that's where we come in to help. We actually help develop people to learn like it's going to be a constant hustle for you, but here's some best practices and some people you can talk to. But yeah, those are the kind of the things that I would definitely recommend. And then just, everyone join a community where you're comfortable and feel safe and be kind to one another.
Okay. And so, are there any projects that you're working on right now that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I mentioned the Make-A-Wish. Another thing that's real relevant to this audience, is we'll be launching our our toolkit for using comics in the classroom is launching now. And we have some volunteers and are still accepting volunteers to work on our committee to develop a TTRPG toolkit for use in educational spaces. So what that will entail will be sort of like quick start FAQs for the educators, and as I mentioned, for parents and all those folks about why we use TTRPGs and what the benefits are, and then best practices to actually give educators practical ways to get started utilizing those materials. So I think that's going to be huge. We've got some great partnerships going with that as far as TTRPG communities that want to expand what they're doing as well. But that is one of the major projects that we're super excited to mention.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to hear about it. So that's great.
Thanks.
All right, so we will have all your contact information in our show notes, but where is the one best place that you'd like people to start to learn more about you or to contact you?
I would start at creatorsassemble.org. That is our website, and it has everything from there. The Limelight Gallery supporting our creators, a way to sign up for our newsletter, which actually our latest one just went out yesterday. Our Discord server information will be on there as well. So that's probably the best place because you can email us directly from there as well.
All right, great. So just Moni, thank you so much for coming on the show, and we'll put those links in the show notes.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Playing the Other, how to play a disabled, mentally ill, or neurodivergent character, whether it's a PC or an NPC, and how to do that in a way that it properly represents symptoms so as to represent those real-life people in your game and give them depth as characters while avoiding harmful stereotypes and tropes. Today, to help us with that, I'm happy to welcome Heather Thomas. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you.
So to start out with, what would you like to tell us about you as a person and as a gamer?
As a person and gamer, I love playing tabletop RPGs. It's probably actually the only multiplayer games that I play, because unlike other ones that are more focused on competing, tabletops are more about working cooperatively. Of course, unless you have the one person who just wants to assassinate everybody, but what's the odds of that? And the other thing I'd like people to know is that I do have a lot of hobbies that I do. And the reason I have so many is A, I'm functionally disabled, so I have way more free time than I know what to do with. And B, they're actually a part of coping strategies for dealing with the symptoms that I have.
Okay. All right. So what would you like people to know about your symptoms, how you experience them, how you adapt to them, and what is and isn't helpful?
I have quite a few symptoms because I have 4 different things going on with me. But the 2 that I've had the longest, that I've had the hardest time dealing with, is intrusive thoughts and executive dysfunction. And intrusive thoughts is, just this random thought popping into my head that I'm not actively thinking about it, but it just shows up. One way I've described it to a friend who also plays D&D is it's like being the target of a sending spell. And so it's just the random thing. And another way of describing it is like going into a grocery store and you hear the music that they're playing, that's your regular thoughts. And then when the PA system comes on for an announcement, that's the intrusive thought, where it's sudden, jarring, and alien. And dealing with it is difficult. I personally have this happening every day, multiple times a day, but it actually will happen to everyone at some point. Another term for it is called the void, because typically it is a thought of prompting you to do an action that will lead to you dying. And the only way I've really found to deal with it is from learning mindfulness as part of the dialectical behavioral therapy I went through. and that is to acknowledge the thought and then just move on. So, like about a month ago, I was driving along and I had this thought as I saw a semi coming on the opposite lane. It's like, oh, I should swerve in front of this semi, which came totally out of the blue because I didn't have an episode where my suicidal ideation flipped from the passive, I'd rather be dead than continue dealing with all of this, to the I'm going to kill myself active ideation. And I sit there, I'm looking at it, and it's like, thank you, but no, we're just going to keep driving like normal. And it's just one of those things where it's like, it happens, and I have to accept that it happens because I can't do anything else about it. So
there's a difference then between those thoughts entering your head and like urges to act on them.
Yeah, there is. So, and over time of having to go through this, I've learned to tell the difference between an active suicidal ideation thought and then just the intrusive thought where it's just like, where'd that come from? And it took a lot of time to realize what was going on. And for somebody who doesn't ordinarily deal with intrusive thoughts, it probably would be very alarming to just suddenly have this urge to do something that's going to end in them dying. And it's just like, what the hell is going on? So.
Sure. And it's worth noting, and you mentioned this before, but I want to emphasize it, that everyone has random thoughts that pop into their head once in a while. Mm-hmm. And so if you've experienced that, I know when I was researching this particular topic, I came across this and I thought, oh, I have these weird random thoughts that pop into my head that are, destructive, or, or that I think, mm-hmm. I would never do that. Why is this idea popping into my head? And I thought it said something, really terrible about me, that I was having these thoughts. And then I found out, no, this is just something that the brain does. Mm-hmm. And it's totally normal, but your experience with it is sort of takes that and amps it up mm-hmm. into something that's on a whole nother level.
Yeah. It basically makes it, instead of being every blue moon, once in a blue moon, it's every day and it's constant. And it's like, it makes it a problem. And like I was thinking about it earlier today, it's like, well, why would our brains do this? And I kind of came up with this idea that it's probably some part of our brain left over from pre-evolution where we had to trial and error everything. It's like, hey, what will happen if we do this? And we no longer have to do that because we have a big enough database of, well, if we do this, this is going to happen. And brain still is like, but I need to try it out to see what happens.
Sure. Okay, and so then what is, you've kind of already talked about how you deal with it, what's helpful. Mm-hmm. Are there things that, it seems like when it comes to disabilities and things like that, that people always have suggestions that are not helpful at all. And I know that feeling of, have you tried this? And you go, yeah, right, because I never thought of that before. Right.
A lot of times it's not helpful to have that, and sometimes it is. But I would say probably the most helpful way to go into that, if you really care about trying to help somebody in that manner, is to start off by asking, what have you tried? That way, if you have a thing where it's like, oh, maybe this would help them, you first get out of the way if they've even tried it. Because then you're not acting, or rather, not leading in with the assumption that they never thought of it themselves. You're asking, okay, what have you already tried?
That's it's funny. That's so simple, and yet it's completely brilliant, and applies to. I'm so happy for you to say that on our first time of having a guest on for this segment, because this is going to apply to every single segment moving forward.
Yeah, it's like one of those things. Like, the other thing that I find so unhelpful, because I will sometimes end up breaking down in public and I'm just bawling because depression. And invariably, I will get asked by strangers, "Are you okay?" It's like, I am crying. No, I'm not okay. It's like, there are much better questions to ask me, like, can you cope? It's like, is there someone that we can get to help you? It's like so many better questions than "Are you okay?" It's like, when is a person crying ever a sign that they are okay?
Yeah. Yeah, we have really weird ways of communicating, these sort of standard idioms that we use to talk to each other, and we kind of default to those things. But yeah, a lot of times they're really not helpful at all.
No, not at all.
Okay. Anything else with intrusive thoughts before we move on to executive dysfunction?
Not that I can think of, no.
Okay. All right. So then you can tell us about how do you experience executive dysfunction?
Executive dysfunction for me mostly comes up when I need to make decisions. Like, it could be as simple as my fiance asking me, "What do you want to eat?" And I'm just like, frozen. It's like, no idea. You can't make it. It's like, nope. She's like, just come up with something. It's like, honestly, it's like, you have an idea of things I do like, things I don't. It's like, just make something, please. Because it's a thing where I start getting really anxious because it's like, I should be able to do this and I can't. And it gets bad to the point of, I do not like the color pink. But if you were to hold up two sets of dice, one that's any other color and one that's pink, and ask me to choose which one I want, there's a no-brainer choice for me, and I'm still frozen. And it's just like, why does it work this way? And it's the same thing where it comes to making, like, I need to do things, and it's like, oh, I get more than like 2-3 things that need to be done, and then it's just like, I'm looking at it like, where do I start? And you freeze. So it's kind of thing, and then that's where you get, it looks a lot like procrastination, because they're not, people with executive dysfunction aren't doing things that need to be done, because when they look at, I need to do this, this, and this, they freeze, so they do anything else.
Okay. So what have you found that's helpful to deal with that?
Well, on some decisions like food, it's like, you're the one cooking or you're the one driving. It's like, you choose. I'll find something at a restaurant that, it's like, most restaurants, I can find something that I'll eat. And when it comes to like the tasks, I actually have made myself a thing, had it laminated, where it's like things in need of doing. There's 20 lines. I have more dice than I probably will ever need, but I love them. I am a dice goblin. And it's like, okay, write out all the things I need to do, and if there's something that's more important than other things that needs to get done sooner or later, it gets written down a couple more times, and then just roll the die. If it comes up an 18, look at the 18th thing on the list, go do that. And then, erase it, maybe add another thing from, make a second entry of something else on the list, and then do it again, and do that for as much things as I have energy for, because with the fibromyalgia that I have, I only have so much energy in a day. Like, basically I have spell slots that I can use for tasks, and then after that it's like, nope, I need a long rest. So.
All right. So then you've already talked about what's helpful. Are there any beyond that things that are not helpful?
Well, it was a process of elimination, like finding that I'm like, just like writing a list out was not helpful, because it's like thinking about it, I'm like, oh, I'll make a list and then I'll know what I need to get done and it'll be easy. And then it's like looking at this list and I'm like, nope, that didn't help at all. And having somebody just like, just, do one thing. And it's like, but what thing? So it was just a process of elimination to come up with this thing where I'm like, hey, make a list of, things that added up to any of the die sizes that I have, because I play Dungeons and Dragons. It's like I have all these different sizes of dice, and then it's like, just roll it. Then I'm not choosing what to do. I make the list, number it, and roll a die. Random number generator.
Okay. So if someone is including a PC, or a Dungeon Master is including an NPC in their game with symptoms like yours, how would you like that character played, and how can the other party members help?
Say, the executive dysfunction one is easy. Like, they would have a hard time, deciding something, and like in combat, like if they needed to choose between like which, enemy might be the more of a threat, they might lose a turn, because they just can't decide. And one of the ways that a party member could help them out is, using, I think, talking would be a free action to sit there and say, hey, attack this person here, and so give them direction, make that choice for them when it's important, and, maybe just sit there and, guide them in where it's, less important choices. Is like, just go ahead and make those choices for them, and just have a lot of patience when it comes to them freezing on making a choice outside of combat. And the intrusive thought one is hard, because unless the character is telling the party members that they're having these thoughts, the party really can't help them. So that's part of having it, being an invisible illness. If you don't tell somebody that it's happening, you look like nothing's wrong with you. But if the party member does decide to, take their party members into confidence, they could sit there and say, hey, it's happening again. And it's like, and then the party members can go, okay, what's the thought? It's like, do you really want to do it? It's like, what do you think will happen if you do it? And, talk them through it. And it's like, hey, we're here for you. We got you.
Okay. All right, great. So then, do you have any online projects, social media profiles, anything like that you'd like to share?
I have recently started streaming on Twitch, both the crocheting that I do and playing video games, because I like doing my crafts, and it's like, I'd like to share these with people, because I know fewer and fewer people, at least around me, that crochet. So it's like, hey, these are interesting. And it's something that it's like, I can do this, and it kind of helps me with my symptoms. And it's like, also as a way to try to help me with my anxiety when it comes to talking to people. So make myself get out there and try to talk to people. So
right.
That's
cool. And we will include links to that in our show notes.
Thank you.
Right. And so, to close out this segment, I want to emphasize that everyone's disability is different. And so note that what you heard today doesn't represent everyone with similar symptoms or diagnoses. This is just one example. And so if you'd like to come on the show and help people understand your symptoms so that they can have more accurate representation in their games, you can just go to wormworkspublishing.com and contact me from there. Heather, thank you so much for sharing yourself with us so that we can bring reality into fantasy and thus make that fantasy world a reality.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, are you still here? Great. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. So that means that you must care about making people's lives better. So if that's the case, then please consider helping us to help you and other people do that. You can do that by supporting our Patreon, but is just as helpful. Just as helpful. We're not just asking, hey, give me your money. All right. We're also asking, even instead, to click on that like button, click on that share button, click on that subscribe button. All right. That helps to get the word out so that if you can't support us financially, there are other people out there that can, but they just don't know about this yet. All right. And even besides that, just we want to get the resources that we have available into the hands and minds of as many people as possible. We want to let them know we believe in what we're doing here, and we really think that it can help a lot of people. But if they don't know it exists, then they don't know where to find it. It can't help them. And so please take a moment to hit that like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, and let people know about this. And then a reminder that if you have a disability, if you are neurodivergent, if you have a mental illness, and you would like to help people understand your experience better so that they can accurately reflect your experience to others, then contact me however is easiest to you. You can email me at dale@wormworkspublishing.com, or you can use the contact form on our website, wormworkspublishing.com, or you can send me a private message on Twitter, wormworksdale, or however is easiest to get a hold of us, our Facebook page, and let me know that you're interested, and we would love to have you on the show. And so now, as we wrap up this episode, here's my question for you, and love you to leave a comment below. What obstacles do you encounter in your creative pursuits?